My name is Manisha Gupta and I am Assistant Professor in Noida Institute of Engineering Technology in MBA department, and I welcome you in a business research method class. And in today's session we are going to discuss about the construction of the frequency distribution and the graphical representation of a data. So, we start with the frequency distribution. So, basically what is a frequency distribution is? The frequency distribution is a tabular arrangement of the data into the classes according to the size and magnitude. Means we divide the data in a tabular format, and on the basis of which different class, in the last class we discussed about the class interval in the frequency table. In the frequency table the class interval was when you arrange or we try to reduce the number of the rows. Suppose the student are getting the marks from 0 to 100 and there are the 100 students were there, and suppose every single student get a different marks. So, there may be the 100 rows. So, you can specify those by making the class interval. Suppose 40 is a passing marks. So, what you can do, one class interval will be who can get 0 to 40 marks. Then who can get more than 40 marks? You can also divide the column into, suppose the third class or the D is giving to the student who is getting the 40 to 50 marks. Then the B is giving to the B grade is giving to the student who is having the 50 to 60 marks. Then B plus is giving to the student who has the grade of 60 to 75 marks, and above 75 marks the student is getting the A grade. So, suppose 76 to your 99 student get the A marks, and who get more than 90, that student may get the A plus marks. So, this is the your class interval. So, you divide the data into the different class and into which you will show the frequency. Suppose here the student get, suppose the number of the student is 100. So, 0 to 40 number will get by 10 student, then 40 to 50 marks will get by 20 student, then again 50 to 60 marks will be get by 25 student, again 60 to 75 marks will get by again 25 number of the students. So, till now how many students will be there? Now, 76 to 90, this marks is given by the 10 student, and who will get the 90 plus marks? 5 student. So, instead of the 100 column, we divide into our data into the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. Instead of the 100 rows, your data is divided into the different rows. So, in the frequency distribution, we basically make the tabular arrangement of the data into the different class according to the size, their magnitude with the corresponding class of the frequency or the number of the value with the full in each class. Then, how we construct the frequency distribution? First of all, we have to find the range of the data. The range means which is the most largest and smallest value, like the marks of the student. It may be the possible the lowest marks will be get by student will be 20 and the maximum marks will be get by 100. So, you have to get to know the what is the range of your data, what is the largest value and what is your smallest value, and after doing that you decide the approximate number of the classes, means how much number of the classes you want to make. So, for that which the data will be grouped, there is a no hard and the fast rule in the class, but in the most cases we have 5 to 20 classes, but HA just provide a formula through which we can determine the how much approximate class should be good for our study. So, he has given the formula like k plus 1 plus 3.322 with log n. N is our total number of the observation, and k will show our number of the class. So, suppose your total number of the observation is 50. So, you are going to put the data means k 1 plus 3.2 with the log 50. So, what is the log of 50? You are going to see the log, and what will the value of the log 50? Suppose this is the value of the log 50, and at the end you will get the result of 7.677, means if you have the 50 observation, then you have to make 7 class approximately. Now, in the next step, what we do, how we are going to construct the frequency distribution. In that, next step is describe the approximate class interval size. In the previous test, we determined the how much class interval or the class will be required. Suppose there is a 7 classes required, then what will be the class interval, means what is the difference between from the one side to the other side. Like in the previous session, we have seen the distribution of the marks. In the one class, there may the distribution of the 20 marks, in the sum is 10, 20. So, what will the difference? What is the class interval? Means what is the difference from the one end to the other end of that particular class. Suppose you are dividing the age group, you have taken the age group like below 20, then 20 to 40, then 40 to 60. So, the 20 is your class interval. Difference between 20 and 40 is 20, difference between 40 and 60 is 20. So, the 20 is your class interval, and so you have to determine the approximate the class interval size. The size of the class interval obtained by dividing the range of the data by the number of the class and denote by the, it is basically divided by the H class or the interval size, then the range number of the class. In the class fraction result, the next highest whole number will be taken as a size of a class interval. So, this is how you are going to determine your class interval size. After that, you have to decide your starting point. So, the lowest class limit or the class boundary should cover the smallest value of the raw data. Suppose it is a multiple of the class interval, then most of the time the class interval they use 0, 5, 10, 15 and the 20 commonly. So, this is going to the what is the starting point. The starting point is basically your lowest class limit, means from where you are going to start our data. Suppose you are collecting the data and you want to determine on the basis of their income group. So, for that you are going to decide that the whatever the income group you are going to decide what will be the lowest limit. Suppose you have decided that we are going to select the sample who has a minimum 2 lakh rupees per year. So, that will be your lowest class limit. Then determine the remaining class limit boundary. After deciding the starting point, you are going to determine their other or remaining class limit or the boundary. When the lowest class boundary has been decided by adding the class interval size, because we get here from the what will be the class interval size. Suppose you decided that you are collecting the data with those people who has the income of minimum 2 lakh. So, this will be the starting of the your class interval, and suppose we get from the these class interval that your minimum limit or the class interval will be of the 2. So, here 2 to 4 lakh, that will become our class interval, and we can add it later on. We are going to add up to how much we want. Then the lower class boundary you are computed, and then you have to decide your upper class boundary, means what will the highest level also. Suppose you are calculating on the income of the people, then what will the highest level of the income which you are going to take, and the remaining of the lower and upper class limit may be determined by the adding the class interval size repeatedly till the largest value of the observation is observed. Suppose in the previous session or in the previous slide we have seen that we can get to know how much class interval size will be recorded. Suppose we get the 7 class interval size, means the 7 class should be added in a study. So, what we are going to do? We are going to make 7 class just like this, means 2 to 4, then 4 to 6, then 6 to 7, and we make it till 7 classes, means we are get the 7 number of the classes. Then in the last step, the distribution of the class into the distribution of the data into the retrospective class. So, till this point we have make our table, we have make our class, we get the interval of the class, what is the maximum upper limit of the class and what is the lower limit of the class, and in the last step what we are going to do, we put the frequency according to those classes. And what we do, all the observation are divided into the respective class by using the tabular method, and which is suitable for the tabulation and the observation into the respective class, and the number of the tabular count to get the frequency against the each class. Suppose we have taken the class like 2 to 4 lakh, then 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 8 to 10, and what we do after that, we add the frequency, means how many respondent is from the 2 to 4 lakh. Suppose there is a 20 respondent, then how many people have the 4 to 6 lakh income? Suppose there is a 40 respondent. So, like this, at the end we prepare our frequency distribution table. What is the characteristics of the frequency distribution, or we can say what we get from these frequency distribution. So, the 4 important characteristics of the frequency distribution is as follow. It helps to measure the center, tendency and location, means mean, median and mode, and it helps to measure the dispersion, means range, variance and the standard deviation. Next, it extends the symmetric and asymmetric value or the skewness, and also it helps to identify the flatness or the peakness, means kurtosis. So, these characteristics or these features will we get from the frequency distribution. So, I will go one by one with all those characteristics. First was our measurement of the center tendency. So, basically in the measurement of the center tendency we get the 3 things: mean, median and mode. Mean is basically the average value. When you sum all the value and then divided by the total number of the observation, you will get the mean value or the average value. And then what is the median? Median is basically the most middle value in the database, that is arranged in the ascending order and from the smallest range of the to the largest. So, basically it shows that where the most of the data is concentrated or what is the most middle value of the data. Suppose if you are calculating the data on the basis like we are calculating the student marks, and we get to know that most of the student get the marks between 55 to 60 marks. So, that will become out of 100 students, suppose in this range there is a 30 students. So, it may give you the median value of a data. Then mode. Mode is basically the most frequency value or the what value which come most or which value has the most of the frequency. Suppose in the middle value we get to know that the where the most of the data is concentrated or what is the most middle value, and this value shows that if you talk about the most middle value in the median, suppose there is a 100 number of the student, then it from the both side there will be the 40 student and this side on also this side. But in the mode, suppose the data is means if the student maximum student is getting out of 100 maximum student is getting 60 marks. So, that is our mode, means whatever the value which is coming most frequently, and the median is basically the most middle value, means from that point there is a equal distribution on the both side. On the both side the equal number of the response or the observation were there. Then the measurement of the dispersion. So basically what the dispersion means, the dispersion helps to interpret the variability of the data, either to know how much homogeneous or the heterogeneous data is, and in simple term it show the skewness or the scatteredness of the data. Basically the measure of the dispersion show that our data is how much homogeneous or the heterogeneous, means they have the similar characteristics or not, or how much similar characteristics they have and how much they have the not similar characteristics. So it will be shown by the three ways. First is range, second is variance, and third is your standard deviation. The range is basically very raw, which give you the difference between the maximum value and the minimum value, means the highest value and the lowest value. There is example is given, suppose there is a 5 values is given from 1 to 7. So how we will get the range? We divide from the highest value to the lowest value. So the range is, here we have divided 7 minus 1. So you get the range is 7. So this show the extent from what point, one point to the other point, what is the difference from one point, one is the highest point, other one is the lowest point. So what is the difference between that? So it give you the range or the distribution. Next is variance. Deduct the mean from the each data in the set and squaring the each of the them and adding and the each square and finally divide them by the total number of the value of the set data bit give you the variance. So variance is calculated basically by when we have the mean, and suppose you get, there is a, suppose this is the observation 1, 3, 5 and 6, you get the mean will be 5. The 5 is the mean of that data. So what we do, we divided the 5 from all data, means 5 minus 1, then 5 minus 3, 5 minus 5, and after that whatever the value we get here, we square them and at the end we square all the added value. Suppose 1 minus 4, you will get the 4, then 2, 0. So all the value which you get, you are going to square it, 16, 4, 0, then again if you go further, and at the end what you are going to do, you add all these value, and then what you are going to do, you divide it by the total number. So whatever the value you get, you again divided by the total number. So this is basically the shown the variance. This is theta square, and it is basically a summation of, this is the your number and this is the means. Means if we are taking this value, the mean is 5, then 1 minus 5 you are going to square, then you are going to add all these value and then divided by the total number. So there is a 5 value is given, so you will get the 5 number, and whatever the result is come, that show your variance. Then the standard deviation. The square root of the variance is known as standard deviation. Here you get the variance, and when you square root that value, whatever the value here come, suppose here you will get the result and the result is 25 of the variance. You are going to put in a square root, so you get the, your result will be 5. So your standard deviation is 5. Now skewness. The skewness refers to the distortion or the asymmetrical that deviate from the symmetrical bell or curve. Suppose refers to the distortion or the asymmetry that deviate from the symmetrical bell, means the normal distributions curve. In the most of the result, the normal distribution curve is like this, and when there is a deviation from this, like there is a deviation or the inclination towards one area or the other area, and your result is showing this, then this is called as a skewness, and the skewness can be quantified as a representation to which you will get your data is distributed and varies from the normal distortion. Next is your kurtosis. So, kurtosis is basically show that describe the distribution where the difference and extreme value versus one other, means the one extreme value, and it basically show the extreme value over the one versus and the other tail. The kurtosis measure the extreme value in the either tail, because in the kurtosis what is show, what is the what value you get the extreme, what is the extreme value, and the distribution with the low kurtosis exhibit tail that are the generally less extreme than the tail of the normal distribution. And normally we have seen the normal distribution curve is like this, and suppose when the peak is very sharp, that is your kurtosis. Now we talk about the graphical representation. Here we talk about the basically in that we are going we discussed about the tabular representation. Now we are going to discuss about the graphical representation. Apart from the diagram or the table, the graphical representation is another way of the presentation of the data using the graph that is used to present time series or the frequency distribution. Here just say it's like here the graph is given that the value is given on the x axis and y axis. Now what is the general rule of the graphical presentation? It is similar to your data, like you have to make the suitable table, you have to show the unit of the measurement in the every table, what is the measurement, what is the limit, if there is a value is giving, then what is the difference is saying, then you have to use the suitable scale, you have to index to your graph or the graphical represent, then you also make sure that and show that from where you have get that data, and also you have to keep it simple and neat, means only the from the one look you will get the information. There is a few type of the graphical representation we have to discuss. One is your bar graph, other was your histogram, and next one is your pie chart. You see that there is in the bar graph the different in the x axis different values given, in the y axis different values given, and from the one bar to the other bar there is a gap in a bar graph, but in a histogram there is a no gap, all the slots were together. Graphical representation basically there is a three types. So what is the bar graph? It contains the vertical axis and the horizontal axis and display the data as a rectangular bar. In the previous section we have seen the data. In the x axis there is the name of the countries is given, in the y axis the amount in dollar is given. So every single graph represents, suppose the India graph is representing that the how much income or the rupees or the dollar value were given, then with the length of the proportion of the value that represent is useful for the visual aid in the marketing purpose. Then what is a histogram? Histogram is basically your frequency distribution, and the graphical representation use adjacent vertical bar erected over the discrete interval, means there is the values given after a discrete interval. In the bar graph the x axis value are not determined, but in a histogram if I go back, like suppose in the bar graph the x axis is just a name, there is a no value were given, but in the histogram there is a given the range of the value, like this point is a 0, this point is 100, 150, 200, 250, 350 and 350. So in the comparison to the histogram, your x axis will be also the divided on the basis of the value or in the interval. Then pie chart is basically show the percentage value as the slice of the pie and a useful visual aid for the marketing purpose. And the bar chart is used when you want to show the distribution of the data point from the performance and comparison, means when you try to compare the different value which you have put in a x-axis and or the subgroup from your data. We use pie chart when we can only sum up with the individual part and add up the meaningful whole, and is built for the visual and how each part contribute to the whole. And meanwhile, the bar chart can be used for the broader range of the data type and not just breaking down into the component. So, the pie chart just to show the percentage of the every section, but the bar graph will give you more information. Then histogram is used to summarize the discrete continuous data. In other words, it provided the visual interpretation of the numerical data by showing the number of the data point that fall within the specific range of the value, means they are dividing it both on the x-axis and the your y-axis. Basically, the advantage of the graphical representation that it give you the clear understanding, then it is a flexible to use. You can increase the structural thinking, by that you will get the support creative personalized report by showing your data in the graphical program, and it will improve your communication, and also you can see the whole picture from just a bar graph or a pie chart. Then there is a few disadvantage of the graphical representation, which is the representation that typically concerned with the cost of the human effort and the source, and the process of the selecting the most appropriate graph and the table representation of the data, that is a greater design complexity and the visual data and the potential of the human biasness. Basically, in the disadvantage, what is the basically most of the disadvantage, that making the preparation of your graphical data, it take more human effort, more human type, more resources, and if you not choose the proper graphical presentation, then it will be not good for you, and sometimes it is give you great complexity when you try to visualize or give the visual presentation of your data, and it may be lead to the potential human biasness. Thank you everyone. This is all for the day. See you in next one.